Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here for a webinar this afternoon on Diploma in Management Excellence with Stephen Boyle. And we'll just give people just another couple of maybe 30 seconds to join and log in there, and then we begin the webinar. Okay, without further ado, we'll get going. So thank you very much for registering and joining our webinar this afternoon. In the sharp session, we're joined by Stephen Boyle, Program Director for Diploma in Management Excellence, and he will share with you what you could expect to gain by attending this program. We're also joined by alumni Hazel Sheridan, Head of Business Modernization and Transformation in the Department of Agriculture. I'd like to take a moment just to share with you our rankings and accreditation. So UCD Smurfit Executive Development, sorry, there's pictures on screen. So UCD Smurfit Executive Development has again achieved a top ranking in the coveted Financial Times rankings in 2026. This places Smurfit Executive Development firmly with an elite group of business institutions that are among the most recognized in the world. Smurfit Executive Development continue in the #1 position in Ireland for our open enrollment programs, marking the 10th year in a row we're in this position. In the custom executive rankings, the school is ranked 9th in the UK and Ireland. We are also very proud of our triple accreditation, as we have accreditation with Equus, AACSB, and the Association of MBAs. And then we have a number of global partnerships as well, with Unicon, SEMS, and the Global Network for Advanced Management. So now, without further ado, I'd like to pass you over to my colleague, Stephen Boyle, and Stephen will take you through our agenda this afternoon. And just to say, if you wish to ask questions, you can do so in the questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. We'll respond to those in live time, and we'll have a space for a Q&A at the end of the session as well. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, James, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to bring you briefly through some essentials of the program, tell you a little bit about whether this is right for you, who is this kind of program for, and then go into some depth about what you will learn. That's what I'll mainly focus on, because I think that's what I would want to know if I were considering this program. Towards the end, as James mentioned, we'll have Q&A. But before that, I'm going to be joined by Hazel Sheridan, who's very kind to join us as a panelist, who's been on the program and who may be able to share some valuable insights and experiences. And as you're thinking about this, you may even have some questions you'd like to direct towards Hazel about the participant experience. First of all, some kind of program basics. So the next iteration of the program launches in October. I'll have precise dates up for you in a few minutes. The program structure of this diploma is that it consists of 6 two-day modules. So 6 times you'll come in for 2 days. Each module is about 6 to 7 weeks apart, giving ample time for any prior preparation for the module, which typically consists of reading and sometimes some assignment work, and post-module work, because there's also assignment work, since this is an accredited diploma. At the end of the process, once we've run our UCD exam boards, which happen a couple of times a year, you're awarded a UCD diploma. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. So the process gives you a third level university qualification, postgraduate qualification. It's a postgraduate diploma. Additionally, we have a suite of other diplomas, and participants who complete any 3 of these 12 diplomas within a 5-year time frame earn a postgraduate master's qualification in business leadership and management. I can tell you that I should perhaps warn you, if you haven't come across us before, if you've never joined us before, that this process is delightfully addictive. Almost all our participants who join us for one diploma come back and they want to do another and they want to do another, because they find the learning process absolutely transformative for themselves and for their organizations. Now, about this specific diploma, So first of all, who is it aimed for? We get a wide range of participants, and it's intended for a wide range of participants. Executives and managers, leaders, or even functional specialists who have a reasonable degree of management experience. Just to mention, as a functional specialist, quite often what happens to people in organizations is they may start as a specialist and then transition into having some or perhaps considerable managerial responsibility. The diploma is aimed to help people underpin that experience that they've gained with an accreditation. Quite a few of our participants say that they feel they want to have some accreditation to back up the considerable experience that they have. But it's not just about getting a diploma and putting it up on your wall. It's really about developing your skill set in a wide range of areas that are important for managers whose role is expanding or whose role has already expanded to acquire. Financial acumen, strategy, operations, the customer employee experience, and very importantly, the soft skills required for managers and leaders. So the likelihood is that if you have some kind of managerial role in the sense of you're managing people, you're managing a function, and perhaps you interact with others in different functions, or you lead a range of functions, this is for you. Typical past participants include those experienced specialists or functional specialists, as I mentioned, who are now transitioning to more general management. Managers who have a reasonable amount of management experience under their belt. High potential executives. You may be observing this webinar and thinking of somebody you might like to send on this program. We get general managers, country managers, business unit heads, project managers, team managers, and so on. Just a little bit about the fact that this is a master's degree, or I should say, it's a third-level postgraduate diploma, which can lead to a master's degree. Some of our participants have not completed an undergraduate degree occasionally, and if that's you, or in that case, we always observe, do they have sufficient experience to come on this? So there is a route to come on this program for people who perhaps never got to go to or complete an undergraduate degree or qualification, but now have sufficient work experience to join in at this postgrad level. More practicalities. The 6 modules themselves, starting on the very 1st of October and finishing by June 2027. As you'll see, there's ample timing between each module for this to be very manageable, very balanced. So one of the things that participants generally observe is this isn't like undertaking an extremely intensive program that's going to take over your life and give you no time for anything else. It's something that even for very busy people can be balanced with work, with family, with other commitments outside of that. So it's practical, it's doable. The modular nature of it also really helps people to focus on an area, to think about it. And the time in between the modules is also very important for what's one of the most important aspects of this. This is not just academic and theoretical. The purpose of this is ultimately that you will acquire and put into practice many, many tools and frameworks which can improve performance in your organization. Let me say a little bit more now about what you'll learn across these 6 diplomas. In the first diploma, we focus on understanding and enhancing your practice and style as a leader, not just theoretically about understanding what different leaders do. We look at we give you enough insight to understand more about how you perform as a leader and how you could improve that performance. The second module turns towards where one side of where an organization's competitive advantage can come from. Operations and supply chain management. This focuses on how your operations and supply chain, and by the way, which all organizations have. You may be in a service organization, you may be in the public sector, but every organization has some operations and supply chain, and how this can drive competitive advantage, and excellence. What do the best organizations do to promote excellence in execution? By the way, one of the ways in which we learn in these kind of programs is through case studies or through other interactive activities. So you will be acquiring best practice insights into other organizations. An additional form of learning is participants in the workshops also discuss their own organizational successes and challenges. We follow this by looking outside the organization or taking an outward view at your market, your customers. How can you create and leverage a strong market position? So this is also relevant for the digital era so that it's practical, it's again, case study and activity based. We now turn to you as a leader once again. This time focusing on communication. How can managers build collaboration for the best executive performance? And also, how can you manage challenging interpersonal situations, which are an inevitable part of management? Then we focus on business profitability and finance, ensuring that good management decision-making is linked with financial performance, seeing how management skills can be the drivers of profit and cash flow for the organization. The final module turns back to you as a manager, maximizing your personal effectiveness, harnessing your sense of purpose, making an impact, making a stronger impact with actually less stress and more satisfaction in your role. So that's the core content of the 6 modules as we progress through. What you'll see here is that it's a combination of functional breadth and depth. We sometimes say ourselves internally that undertaking this particular diploma is like undertaking a miniaturized version of a whole master's or program in all sorts of areas that are relevant to the manager. So it's like a very broad toolkit in both the functions and also the skills for managers. There are also practical elements that help you to advance your own understanding and performance of what you can deliver to the organization, a simulation exercise where you will be the driver, you will be the decision maker, and you'll get feedback on what you've done and how you've performed and insights into your decision-making approach. A practices assessment on how you perform as a leader, what you actually do. Some research shows that managers have very little understanding or recognition of their own leadership style. And this is a great opportunity for you as a manager to learn exactly what you are doing and what would you like to change in that, or what would you like to lean into, do more of. And then in the final module of the diploma, you will be developing a personal impact plan for harnessing your own strengths. So in other words, the diploma focuses very much on giving you knowledge and skills that you can use. And this is underpinning the very core purpose of the diploma. We start with learning concepts and frameworks that are essential to the topics in hand. This isn't just academic learning. You will be practicing in the safe classroom environment, practicing with discussion, case study, the kind of things we've just mentioned, practices, assessments, planning, simulation, to develop individual and team skills. And then extremely important, to me, actually, maybe the most important part of it is putting it into practice, application. So using the knowledge and skills to put these things into practice. How will you do that? Well, most participants do it independently off their own bat, but we also design the assessments which are a required part of the fact that this is an accredited diploma. The assignment work that we give you is very typically aimed at helping you to apply what you learn in the organizational environment. There's a range of benefits. Participants will master the skills and behaviors that they need to enhance relationships as well as results. So it's that balance of being a great leader as well as a great manager, relationships and results. broadening your knowledge of the business functions, the cross-functional challenges. And indeed, quite a lot of our participants, when they enter the program, they say that one of the things they also want to learn is a deeper understanding of the language of other parts of the business and a greater confidence for engaging in those cross-functional discussions. The diploma will increase your confidence that you're using best practice, that you're engaging in the right elements of decision making, and you're applying good techniques and frameworks. It also is aimed at enhancing your personal development, your vision about where you are, where you want to get to, what skills you have, and how you can develop them. And indeed, of course, you gain a recognized, accredited qualification from our highly ranked, triple accredited business school. We're going to be joined now by Hazel Sheridan. Hazel, as a former participant in the program, is there anything in here in particular that you would say was a highlight of your journey through the program?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Lovely. So actually, it struck me as I was listening to you, Stephen, that my experience of the program is very much as you've described it. So absolutely, all of the things that you said, that has been my direct experience. I think the particular highlights for me, certainly that reflection on what you're doing. What really struck me was how much we're acting on automatic pilot, and that we're not really thinking about the decisions we're making, and particularly in my case, not always thinking about the impact on others and how things might land. So I found both the first and the sixth modules particularly good on that, because they're asking you to look at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and why are you doing it and how could you do it better. I have to say I found the module on competitive advantage really fantastic, and particularly applicable to the role I'm in, and the challenge that organizations are facing, large organizations like mine, particularly because the environment in which we're operating is so complex. And it was such a comfort, really, to see that it's just not our organization struggling with this. There are organizations, other organizations struggling with it. But then there is theory and knowledge to help you deal with that. And certainly that was fundamental in how I was approaching the particular role that I have. Another one that was a highlight for me was the communication module. So it presents a model that I'd never heard of before called the model of nonviolent communication. And I just found that an absolute game changer. And it completely changed how I thought about communication. And in situations where I knew my communications weren't very effective, it certainly provided a framework to enable you to communicate in a more effective way. Other highlight, I think, was the final module, that purpose, thinking about your purpose and very particularly what your strengths are and where you can make your biggest contribution. So I found that just a fantastic piece of reflection. And I remember, I think it was Stephen, you said at the very beginning of the program that this is an investment in yourself. And certainly that's what I found. This is an opportunity to kind of step off the hamster wheel and just to step back and, in the lens of the information presented and the frameworks presented, to look at where you are, where are you going? And, am I happy with that? And in some cases, people are. And in other cases, it's, okay, well, maybe there's something that needs to change. So that's certainly a flavor, Stephen, of what my experience was.
Thanks, Hazel. There's a couple of things strike me there as very interesting about what you've highlighted. One is you highlighted the competitive advantage through operations module as being especially relevant and applicable. And I know why that is. It's relevant to all organizations. And I did stress that earlier, public and private sector, but you're in a senior role in a public sector organization. And yet I've sometimes encountered managers in public sector organizations wondering whether a module like that would be really so relevant to them, competitive advantage, thinking, well, who am I really competing with? So that's one thing that's fascinating. So those of you who are listening to this and thinking, well, is this really applicable to my organization? Usually in the private sector, people obviously realize the benefit of competitive advantage, but I'm glad to hear the relevance to you in the public sector also. Another one is thinking about those soft skill modules like communication and harnessing your purpose for greater impact. The soft skills, someone once famously said, the only thing harder than the hard stuff is the soft stuff, meaning that for managers, soft skills can be really hard to develop and master, often because we don't really understand anything beyond our own approach, and we see a risk in trying to change our style. Well, something you highlighted there is we focus very much on helping people to see what are their strengths and lean into those, rather than having you beat yourself up talking about weaknesses and so on, and trying to patch up things where you might have great strengths that you're not fully exploiting. Thanks, Hazel. We will now open up for questions and answers. And James, perhaps if you've already spotted any questions coming through in the chat as host, you might be able to tell me.
Yes, Stephen, and thank you so much, Stephen and Hazel, for sharing your insights there. And Hazel, thank you so much for the specific role insights in your organization as well. It's great to hear those come to life. One question that we've had here is in terms of personal time commitment in terms of input, because obviously there's only 12 days on site. What kind of work do participants have to do outside of the program in order to meet with the requirements of the assignments and the pre-reading, etc.?
Okay, why don't I give the official version, and then maybe Hazel, as a former participant, you could indicate what you think it is. So the preparation for the module would consist of reading. My guess is that the reading might take 1 to 2 days for most participants, including note-taking, depending on your reading speed and how assiduous you are and so on and so forth. The module itself is obviously 2 days. If there's a pre-module assignment, I would suspect that might be a day's work or thereabouts, or it might be more, and that could be spread out, you see. It could be spread out. You do a few hours here, you do a few hours there. It might be more than that. The post-module assignment is usually weighted more heavily because we've covered the material then. And that might also be a couple of days' work. My experience is different participants put in different amounts of time. Hazel, what about your viewpoint on this? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And in fact, it was the question I had in my mind when I started the diploma, because I have a really busy job. I have lots of outside interests. And for me, I had heard stories about MBAs being so demanding. I knew I couldn't undertake something like that. So what I particularly like about this program is that even if you find you start a diploma and you find it's more than you can manage just at this particular point in your career, at least you come away with something. You come away with a diploma. You may not go on and do the masters, but I've met people during my time that would have done a diploma at one point in time, and then they'll come back to it 3 or 4 years later and do another diploma. So it's not lost. So I think that was the first key thing. In terms of the demand, and there is some guidance provided about the amount of hours that it takes. All I can say is I found it really doable. As I said, really, really busy life, but I actually found it entirely doable. That there's there is a good chunk of time given to do the assignments, and I mean the modules in the premises are really enjoyable because it is that opportunity to meet people that you wouldn't meet in the normal course of events. It's a really nice facility, lovely food provided, so it's a very comfortable place. And really enjoyed the 2 days. And again, the reading I think is manageable. I suppose in my particular case, what I found interesting was because I was really enjoying the material, I didn't find it really hard going. Now that's not to say everyone's experience is the same. There were certainly, it's really about the relevance to your particular job and the point you are in your particular career and why you're doing it. But if you're very clear on all of those things, as I said, I found the material very enjoyable. and really didn't find it a strain to get things done. And I found, great help from the course facilitators and some understanding. I ran into some domestic, personal issues while I was doing the diploma, and there was, very good understanding about that. So I think it's entirely manageable, and that, that for me was really important, and it's why I've gone on and I'm doing another diploma. As Stephen says, once you start, it's addictive. You can't stop.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Hazel. And
Thanks, Hazel.
That's very typical of what participants would say, that it's very manageable. In fact, it's very, very rarely that I've come across anybody saying this is too much. Of course, occasionally, as Hazel just indicated, sometimes something personal or specific gets in the way, and we are very flexible. We help. We really want to facilitate you, but we have extremely busy participants who still manage to balance this and have a life and keep up with work and so on. So it's very doable.
And thank you so much. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add something actually to what Steve was saying. For me, it's you get out with what you put in. I know that's such a cliche, but that is absolutely the case. The more you put in, the more you will get out of it. But even, if you find that you're excessively busy and whatnot, you will get plenty of value. There's no question about it in my mind. Sorry, James.
No problem. Thank you so much, Hazel. That's brilliant, actually, to hear exactly what the situation is from your perspective. And there's one linked question, just quite briefly there, and it's about in terms of the assignments and the work being linked to the practical output. It's very much linked to practical application in the workplace.
Yeah, wherever possible, we really encourage people to do that.
Yeah, fantastic. We've a couple other questions there that we'll get back to privately there, because we're just coming up close on time there for the end of the webinar. Thank you very much all for attending. My name is James Bannigan. We're joined by Stephen Boyle, Programme Director, and Hazel Sheridan from the Department of Agriculture, past participant and current participant on our second programme on our Master's Pathway. If you have any questions, or you'd like to find out further information, or you'd like to have a private chat with ourselves and the client development team, please feel free to contact us. There's contact details on the site there, and then we will follow up with a recording of the webinar and our details then as well. So thank you so much for your time, and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you, Hazel, and thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.